The Gallagher Shots podcast is sponsored by Tyre Spot, the Northeast's leading tyre supplier with branches across the region. Tyre Spot don't just do tyres, they cover everything from servicing to wheel alignment. They can handle every aspect of your car's maintenance. For more information, visit tyrespot.co.uk. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome back to the Gallagher Shots YouTube channel. My name is Matthew and thank you for being here for another episode of Beyond the Lines. It's the show where we get an opposition supporter's view when it comes to previewing Newcastle's next game. And this Saturday, 3 o'clock, it's the game that some are calling the Antoine Sibierski derby as Newcastle go in search of what might be their first point or maybe points at the blue half of Manchester since 2006 as they take on Man City at the Etihad. And to help me preview this one, I'm joined by a very special guest. He's the man behind the Esteemed Kompany podcast and YouTube channel. It's the one, the only, the brilliant, the beautiful. It's Stephen, ladies and gentlemen.
I mean, that's all true apart from the brilliant bit. Definitely beautiful. There. No, welcome, man. And I enjoyed the Antoine Sibierski reference as well. A man who would have been world class if his radar was aligned by 20 degrees more. The amount of times he nearly scored for City by hitting the ball or being just that far over. Cursed to be nearly, and that's. But anyway, I don't know what it was like for you guys, but for us, that was.
Well, I think your loss was, and I'm all about opening up with some Sibierski chat, by the way.
All right.
I mean, I think
I came with Keegan's story by the way about Sibierski as well, by the way. So,
well, we're gonna have to hear it then. Well, I will say though, Sibierski, I think he's a bit of a cult hero at Newcastle. I think he scored his first goals against some obscure teams in qualifying stages of the UEFA Cup, now the Europa League. Scored a few goals in there, and he scored some pretty important goals in the Premier League. Only 2 or 3. I remember one against Portsmouth. But yeah, I think he was quite fondly thought of. Wanted a bit more money when he wanted the contract extension, ended up going to Wigan. So yeah I think he's quite fondly thought of at Newcastle. I need to hear this Kevin Keegan Sibierski story though.
It's not much, literally, because he signed for City when I was about 17, 18 or something like that. And Keegan, I did that thing where you're at the sidelines and Keegan's there. And I went, oh, what's this new guy? He went, oh, you're going to see him. He's going to be special, this guy. You're going to love him here at Man City. And Kevin, basically, that was it. That's the extent of the story. I bumped into Kevin Keegan. And he told me you should be looking forward to the signing we're about to make. And I was very giddy for Antoine Sibierski. And I don't think anyone's ever been giddy for Antoine Sibierski. But you know what? Yeah, he was all right, actually. And he's sort of slightly fond memories of him in a City shirt, you know.
Did he have hair at your place? Did he have hair on his head? Did he have hair?
I don't remember. In my head, he's bald, but I'll Google.
Yeah. He always bald at our place. But I think I remember seeing an old picture of him with a bit of hair, and it was just weird.
He was dead bald for us. He had he occasionally grow out a little bit, but he was a bit horseshoey every now and then. But he was very bald.
Well, what a kick-off to this chat that says Sibierski.
Bit ended now, let's be honest.
Yeah, it's all been great. Yeah, like, share, and subscribe. It's been good. But yes, thank you so much for being on today, Stephen. How are you doing? How are you getting on?
I'm all right, mate. It's a weird season. The curse season, I keep calling it. We're probably due a curse season given the success we've had over the past decade with Guardiola and so on. But it's obviously off the back a couple of days ago of the Real Madrid game, which was another kick in the teeth. We've had a lot of them. As far as I've got any teeth left, to be honest, this season. And it's been a really weird year. Semi-relaxed about it. I don't know. I think it's something about probably the level of success we've had and the fact that there's such obvious problems in this side. It's not like we're all scratching our heads working out what's going on. The City fans know what's going on. So that's where we're at this season, basically. And that's how sort of the mood is at, really, in terms of football. Yeah. Just a weird year, but it's not over, and there's still plenty to talk about, and still plenty to aim for City as well. So yeah, it's a strange one.
Well, that's why we get fans from other clubs on to explain the things that maybe we aren't seeing. Because obviously, my first question, and it's just an absolute can of worms, really, because it's not what questions can I ask that haven't been asked in your fan base already this season. I mean, we know where you are. I mean, obviously you're sitting fifth, but obviously that's not good in terms of City's, standards. What can be said? I mean, the season itself, it's a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside, an enigma for people from the outside looking in. Because I think a lot of people, they always say this easy answer of, the Rodri injury and then whatever. But can you try to succinctly put what's gone on? How can you put your thumb on it about what's happened?
As with anything, really, when something this catastrophic happens in terms of what you'd expect from someone, it's a combination of factors. factors. Some more pressing than others, but ultimately the long and short of it is this team has run its course and they've not really prepared for it. Guardiola's come out and admit it, so there's no real mystery to it anymore. For if you paying attention to City in the way that I would as a fan, he's come out and said afterwards that maybe he resisted a rebuild essentially, and the feeling was with the sporting directors and so on that with the players approaching 30 and some well over 30 after they won the treble, that we probably should start now, start getting some players in. But he was like, no, I like these players, I trust them. And we signed a couple of players, like Nunez came in. Vardiel, obviously great, but then we signed in the summer just Gundogan and Savinho. So Gundogan was returning after leaving, and then Kovacic came in as well, to be fair. But there was no signs of anything major. It was just tweaks here and there, but major players left. People like Riyad Mahrez and so on. And Kyle Walker now, of course, as well. Before that, obviously, we saw the likes of Gabriel Jesus, Sterling, Zinchenko, and Cancelo, Laporte. Loads of players of immense quality that you associate with success. But essentially, City, I think the injury of Rodri has massively. It was a paper over, I think, a crack that was widening. Not paper, plastic, sorry, of a crack that was widening. And since it's come off, it's everything just spilled out. And essentially, you've got players. Most of our squad, half of our squad is 30 plus. And this is not sustainable at any level. That really, unfortunately, but too many that are players that we're leaning on. People like Ilkay Gundogan, Kevin De Bruyne, Kyle Walker is one of them. He's now moved on mid-season. Our captain left mid-season because he couldn't handle it, which is wild, but it's genuinely true. And then injuries have been absurd, but that once again is an age thing. People like Ake and Akanji and John Stones and De Bruyne and Kovacic, all these people are injury prone already, but they're all older. They're all 30 plus, and it's just caught up with them. So I think there's an element of leading in players who can't run anymore. Not rebuilding, and this is not me moaning or complaining, by the way. It's fine. I'm genuinely not. These aren't excuses, as people say if you start to explain things. You're making excuses. I'm just talking. People do that all the time. I'm sure you.
That's why you're on, brother. That's why we've got you on.
I'm sure you get it when you do. If you have a bad loss, everyone's like, "Why are you making excuses?" Like, no, just explaining. But this is what's happened. Guardiola said that he personally said he didn't want to sign loads of players. He just wanted to keep the squad that was close to him, that he knew. But it's just a season too far. And then when you get all that combined with probably a slight lack of hunger, when you've won the lot, that 1% makes such a difference at the elite level, and if the players are thinking about winning the league, but they're also thinking, I'm getting a bit tired here, and I could be double my money in the Saudi or the MLS or whatever, they're not there. You're not fully there. Edison wanted to go in the summer. He tried to leave until the last minute. So basically, players have got old, and the players that are replacing them are either young or just not ready yet, or not good enough. Like Nunez is not good enough. He probably is what he was, a mid-table player, for Wolves when we signed him. He's not getting any better. And so that's it. That's sort of it, really. A combination of poor signings, Calvin Phillips, Nunez, even Kovacic. He's a 7 out of 10 player, but he's not. He replaced Gundogan, who was at the point our captain, who won the treble for us. It's a step down, and he's okay. And then people like Savinho, Doku are young, the prospects, but previously we'd signed Mahrez. He was PFA Player of the Year, and he was our rotation option with Sterling or Sane. So I'm not saying everyone has to be that, but they were sort of the standards, and they've dipped a bit. So some poor signings that failed, players getting older, injuries were absurd at one point. Losing Rodri, who was so good that he was three midfielders in one, the best DM, creatively brilliant, scored wonder goals, 10, 20 goal contributions this season while also being the best number 6 in the world. So he was a one-man midfield, basically. And De Bruyne has just dropped off a cliff. Gundogan has been terrible since he returned, sadly. Kyle Walker went terrible overnight as well. All those factors. I know there's a long answer there, but it's not easy to explain. It's reasonably complicated, but also so simple. You can see it coming,
Yeah, I think you've comprehensively covered it. I mean, one thing I was saying, you've talked about kicks in the teeth, and I think some people listen to this, or whoever, if someone was to listen to this outside of a Newcastle Man City sort of forum, and they might be thinking, oh well, woe is you. And I know you said that you're not complaining.
It's all relative, man. It's all relative.
It's all relative. 100%. You're dead on. But even like when people were asking me, being and banging into football, people were saying, "What do you think's going on with City? Do you reckon it's time for Pep to move on? Do you think it's it?" And I was like, I don't think the problems. I think there's problems there, like he's just
made
said.
Mistakes before it's worth Pep, but
they all make all make mistakes, don't they? But at the same time, and we'll get on to Pep shortly. But I think purely because of what Manchester City have done over the last decade or so, any sort of drop down from those standards are hugely magnified because of how dominant they've been. Now, it is a huge drop off just to drop down to 5th and not be in contention in the league at this time of the season. They're still in the Champions League and they're still in the FA Cup, and we'll get on to your hopes and expectations for the rest of the season in due course. But I just feel like, I think it is magnified purely because City have been that good that even if when they have this off season due to all these points, it's like everything's on fire, everything. And who can we point the fingers at? And we've just mentioned Pep Guardiola there, and I don't think anyone's really saying too much about him or doubting his position. He's obviously signed his new contract, and I see him as one of the best coaches, or the best coach to ever do it. There is a silly opinion that he's walked into he's inherited teams that are ready made for success. I think if you look into that, you'll find out that really he wasn't. I mean, what he did at Barcelona was absolutely amazing. There's books being written on it and how he's revolutionized football in general. Whether that's for the better or the worse, that's totally a pub conversation. But what is Pep to you? This might be a silly question, but I'm just saying in terms of in this sort of funny season that you're having, is there frustrations towards Pep, or is he still just untouchable, bulletproof at this point?
Both are true.
Okay.
I think both are true. Like, he's untouchable and bulletproof. But it doesn't mean it's like your family's untouchable. But you can still get frustrated with them. It can be a labour of love sometimes. And I think this season, Pep has actually made some pretty big mistakes. Actually, he's come out and admitted them, and he's had some decisions which have been immensely frustrating, even for someone who's pretty reasonable like myself. I'm quite relaxed about, I understand that people are human. They make mistakes. It's not a big deal. And ultimately, I'm sort of the view of that if someone openly admits a problem and they're very obviously working towards solving it, then that's the only thing there. I just don't like being gaslit, as a fan where they're pretending everything's fine. Pep's come out and said he's even said recently as the Madrid game, like, I am not the manager who can fix this, which is quite scary. What he means by that is that he isn't built, and I think this is probably him being very honest, he isn't built to manage a team that's struggling. He isn't. He's the finest of champagnes. He's not meant to. You don't get a Magnum and put it with a McDonald's. You don't. It comes with like it doesn't. It comes with like those fanciest restaurant in the film where you get McDonald's that costs $2,500 instead. But that's the point. That's the point about him. I think he can't deal with a crisis in that way because he isn't meant to be that. He's give me the best and I will fine tune them and make them a winning machine. Yeah. And right now, the only thing is he's made mistakes because he, by all accounts, and he said it himself, he was the one who resisted the rebuild. And if Guardiola and you're trying to get him to sign a new contract, he's quite adamant about something. You're not going to say, well, you're wrong, I'm going to go behind your back and please sign that contract anyway. You sort of have to counter Guardiola, don't you? Because he is Pep Guardiola. So you're trying to get him to extend, while also him trying to sign new players and him going, no, I don't want to. So they can't really say no to him. He's Pep. If he doesn't want new players, and he's actually said multiple times, it was my fault. I was probably wrong for not signing players, not replacing the older ones whose head would turned a little bit. And I think the frustration from City fans is that he keeps talking about the issues. Like, he said multiple times that we are the worst team in the league at defending a transition because we're old. He said the players are old. And the frustration for City fans is like, we're looking around and we're seeing Morgan Rogers and Cole Palmer and all these young players who've gone on to do really good things. And we're going, you've got Jason McAtee and Nico O'Reilly and all these young lads there who are really good. And you're never playing them. So you keep saying, I guess it's frustrating always if someone says the problem, but they never do anything at all to fix it. Like anything. Guardiola's not changed anything for 3 months now. And look, it is what it is. He's obviously got his methods. He doesn't want to play the young players. He trusts the senior players. But the same thing has been happening for 3 months now. The same problems and the same. And that's where I think people are getting frustrated because they're like, surely just try something a little bit different. But he doesn't want to. He's Pep. He tries the same thing until it works. And I respect that. But it doesn't make it any easier to watch sometimes. And this isn't me moaning about Guardiola. This is me just talking about, well, why some frustration is building amongst some people. It doesn't mean you don't love them, but it does mean it can be hard sometimes, especially when you watch us throw away the lead. And when, Gundogan came on and Kovacic came on against Real Madrid, two very big names, but they've been names very culpable of City throwing away the lead this season. And it happened again against Real Madrid, and it felt so predictable. And we keep throwing away the lead against everyone and in the big games. And at some point, it starts to get irritating. It's not to say I don't love Pep, and I'm not to say I don't think he should be here. But I think he's had a bit of poor season. And I'm a firm believer that managers go through form as well. People never talk about that. It's always about players in form. And it's always about, oh, he's in form. Like, why can't a manager be in form? Why can't a manager be making good decisions one year and bad decisions the next? And I think Pep this year, he's had a really bad year by his standards. And we'll allow it, But, It is. It's a weird one, because a lot of people will just turn around and go, "Well, he's washed and his ideas have done." No, he's too smart to do that.
Yeah.
It's just that tactics have changed multiple times as well while being at City. They actually have you. People pay attention. It's not the same team 2 or 3 times now. He's changed his team massively. So yeah, he'll be fine. He'll probably get the signings in the summer. Yeah, we'll spend the money that accrued for all the sales, and then we'll see where it goes.
Well, you've just said the magic word of signings there.
Magic.
And by the way, the champagne McDonald's analogy, definitely going to use that in the future.
I don't know where that came from. As the smartest thing I've ever said, I'll take it.
But you've just mentioned the word signings. Obviously, City massively active in the January transfer window. You mentioned as well, I'm going to piggyback off the back of you mentioning about Jeremy Doku and Savinho, that in terms of raw players, like exciting players, but
Very
raw.
exciting. And
raw players. And I mean, I know 2 of your signings were centre backs, but in terms of who you've signed, I would probably label them the same as well, or maybe they're going to take a while to gel.
Yeah,
but
right.
what I mean, two questions. I mean, are you, it's early days, but you're excited about these new signings, and who were you most excited about? You've got Kushinov, who was actually linked with Newcastle United, and we're a bit hamstrung at the moment with funds ourselves, and hopefully in the summer that'll change. But then Victor Reyes, Mamouche, and Gonzalez, is there any one of them who you particularly were like, yes, we've got to. That's a proper Manchester City signing.
All fascinating in terms of they're all to be honest, the feeling going into it was like, well, we need a right back because Kyle Walker's just literally disappeared, and Nunes is not a right back, and Rico Lewis is tiny and struggled for form this season. Technically great, but he's not been that guy. So everyone's like, we need a defensive midfielder and we need a right back. And we need a centre back probably of experience, because honestly, it's been a stupid watching Diaz, Akanji, Stones, and Ake they play 45 minutes and they're off for 3 weeks. It's like it's happening they're all rotating their time on the bench, and when they come back, you can tell they're just not fit because they're not even lasting 60 minutes, even if they're not injured. They're being subbed off straight away. So we've been crying out for a centre back to come in to alleviate some of the pressure. So what did we do? We signed an 18-year-old from Brazil he's played about 30 games in his career, and a 35 million-year-old guy that no one's ever heard of until So essentially, we signed 2 random players who probably got a lot of talent, but they're just obviously not ready yet. Not in a bad way. They're very young. They're not going to come in and immediately bolster a Premier League winning defense. They're going to be projects, which is fine. To be honest, a small part of me loves that. I've been so spoiled as a City fan watching superstars come in, and great, exciting players. But I love a narrative in football. And I'm the guy who didn't want Harry Kane at Man City because he was the dullest transfer in the world. I didn't want this guy who's come in and who's made a name, already a superstar, and it was the Spurs guys who come in. For me, when we signed Haaland, that was way more interesting because he was only young, and the story there. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is these signings can be more exciting than big superstar ones sometimes because there's no expectation, but there's also the sort of shock of the new to it, where it's a guy you don't know. They've got a little bit of mystery, which is a rarity. We know everything about football these days. I never heard of Vitor Reyes, and we're signing for 30 million. And that to me is actually interesting as opposed to some guy from the Italian league who we've all heard of. He's probably been around for years and everyone's an expert about. So those 2 are projects. Kusanov, we've seen him. He had a stinker of a start against Chelsea. Covered well, to be fair to him. But then he's had a cameo. He's only against Leighton Orient in Italy, but he looked powerful in that, and you can see why we signed him, a bulldog of a centre back with loads of pace. So I'm excited for him. He needs to learn English, the poor lad. He doesn't speak any language that any of the team speak at all, which is hard. And Vitor Reyes, we'll see. He looks very young, in terms of he's physically small as well for a centre back, in terms of he's quite lanky still. So we'll see. I'm very excited for Nico Gonzalez. I think he is an archetypal Pep Guardiola footballer. Learned the more aggressive approach in Porto, where he resembled more of a Declan Rice sort of profile, where just box to box, aggressive, can defend, 6'2", strong, decent turn of pace, but good relish the battle. But also, when at Barcelona 3 years earlier, he was seen as the heir apparent to someone like Busquets, where he was just more of an elegant number 6 who dictate the tempo. So you add those attributes together, you've got a Guardiola midfielder who could fit with the rough and tumble of the Premier League these days. So I'm very excited for him. Take time, but I think he could be a really special footballer with a little bit of love. And Marmoush looks an electric forward as well. Is the most informed player, other than maybe Harry Kane, in terms of goal scoring in the Bundesliga. The concern with him is that he's clearly a guy who wants to make runs in behind, but very possession heavy. So we'll see how that goes. But the early signs for those guys, for him in particular, look very promising if we use him properly. So, yeah, a random bunch of names, but very clear to me that the new signings are also Hugo Viana, the ex-Newcastle fella, who's now obviously City's new sporting director. They've got him stamped all over them, even if he hasn't started work yet. There's been photos of him in Manchester. We all know he's working here. He's not meant to be, so just don't tell Sporting,
Hugo Viana, again, it's I don't think I'd put him on the same level as Antoine Sobieski. Much prettier than
Very
Sobieski.
handsome man.
No disrespect, Antoine.
Great head of hair,
Yeah, great head of hair. Scored a free kick. I think he scored in that fearful night in. I might get absolutely dragged over the coals here. That fearful night in the Champions League.
I'll believe anything you say, so don't worry about it.
Well, at least you will anyway. I'm sure he scored the night that we had the famous Bellamy Champions League goal. But anyway, I digress. But I've got two questions to ask you before we get onto the game. I hope you don't mind. I know you're strapped for time, mate.
No, I'm all right. Don't worry. It's fine.
But we're in a cup final soon, and I don't try to talk about it too much. We've got a massive cloud over our heads. We haven't won a trophy in a long time, 70 odd years.
It's been that long.
It has been that long. 1969, Intercity's first cup.
How do Newcastle not win a trophy in 70 odd years?
So, well, I've been asking myself that question since 1992 when I could think about football. But if we were to win a trophy, there'd be hell on earth. Everyone be hugging each. It's going to be amazing if it happens, and it's a big if because we're playing a very good Liverpool side. Manchester City, before your takeover, there's obviously been comparisons given the similarities in the takeover. Obviously, financial restrictions have came into place since we were taken over, so that's why we can't do what necessarily you guys did. However, I'll always remember when you won that FA Cup against, it was at Stoke City at Wembley. You've won that trophy, and I would love to know how you felt then, but you've won so much silverware since then. Has it as a fan, has it diluted those feelings at all since that first trophy? Is the first trophy, was that more special than number 10, number 15? Did they get less and less more important, or do you, as a fan, do you still?
They're not less important, but it's only human nature to. The shock isn't quite as it's not as shocking if you win the league, win 4 in a row. Like it's great. Don't get me. I'm never not going to enjoy it. There's not a single person in the world who doesn't get used to something, and like it still means the world. And I will never not enjoy every single trophy because I'm old enough to know that this could disappear, and I've experienced it. I'm 39, so. I grew up when City was still in the Premier League, but we just about to become that yo-yo club where we're going up and down constantly, And I was there watching when we were down in the old Division 2. So I was like 13, 14 around then, and I remember it vividly. And then I remember the main road era, and when we moved to the old, it was called the City and Manchester Stadium, then when it became the Etihad, and I remember all that. Just passionately, and I remember Stuart Pearce managing us and being shambolic, and so I remember all that, and that sort of grounds me. And I try and tell the sort of younger fans when I'm doing my videos, just please enjoy this. Do not moan about Guardiola. He's not worth it. This is the greatest period this club will probably ever go through. If you live to 1,000 years old, you might never see a period this good, because I don't think there's been any period this good in English football probably ever anyway. 4 in a row off the back of a 3 in a row treble. It's 100 points, 98 points, win records, goal scoring records, anything you could ask for as a football fan, we've seen over the past 8-9 years under Guardiola. It's been absurd, and it is sort of pinch yourself level good, and there's always a reason to enjoy a league. It's win the league, but I guess what I'm saying, there's always a new story, a new angle. And for us, at the 4 in a row, for example, it was Phil Foden winning it for us, being the PFA Player of the Year, the City lad who picked City up on his back and grabbed 27 goals and was amazing. And it's only natural that they start to get a little bit less. And people watch this and be cynical about it. Trust me, I mean this with the most human intention possible. There's no team in the world who can win 4 leagues in a row and be as passionately, this is the best thing that's ever happened to you for the 4th as it's the first. It's just impossible.
Especially when the first one was, won the way it was as well.
Exactly, yeah. It was, and look, to be honest, even there was always stories, and it always makes it so great. It's still wonderful, and it's still amazing. But I think it's probably why this season for me doesn't hurt that painfully, because it's been great, and that's probably the better way of looking at it. You've had so much success that this year, to me, it's not the biggest of deals, and it isn't because I feel full, you know. I do. We've gorged on Guardiola's.
You've gorged on champagne and McDonald's.
Exactly. Yeah. This is the McDonald's this year, man. It's still all right. You know, we're fifth. But the champagne, I'm full of champagne. To be honest, sometimes I just need a cheeseburger right now. Actually,
Couple of nuggets. Yeah.
I need it to remember what the champagne tastes like. So I mean, there's like, and I do actually believe that, you know. And Guardiola said it as well. Like, I actually think for some of the younger fans, this will be good for them because they've been spoiled, and I don't think any football fan should get 5 leagues in a row. Actually, I think I should, as a City fan, I should get 5 leagues in a row. But ultimately, I don't think anyone needs that. I don't think you need it, and I think there is gluttony in football. And as much as I want it to happen, I know it probably isn't good for me. I don't. It probably is too much champagne, you know. Yeah. So it still feels amazing. It doesn't pay me this season because we've had so many, and I think we're due this. Really, if we're being honest, you know, it can be too much of a good thing, and I think actually City right now are probably paying the price of that. I think we got a little bit complacent, and Guardiola said it. That's not me projecting; it's probably true, you know. So.
Yeah, well, look, I understand. Thank you very much for that answer. You've just said 3 words there that I'm going to say you've unlocked a end of level boss of a question, and I don't mean to. I don't want to.
I love an end of level boss, mate. I don't stop until we beat him. So we'll see what happens.
But you said the words "pay the price" there. And obviously,
which we should have done for Bruno Guimaraes in the summer.
Yes, well, you're never going to get him ever.
We could have at one point. Yeah, the risk clause. We should have paid it. What were we doing?
Over my dead body, Stephen.
Well, it would have been over £100 million to your owners, and they would have been fine. You know, so like, sadly, happy for you, but what a footballer! He was my number 1 signing.
Pay the price. How, as a City fan, given all that stuff you've just said, how do you feel about the looming spectre of these charges?
I genuinely don't care.
You don't. So you're saying that if
so bored of it, mate.
Yeah, I can imagine. So that's why I was saying it's a bit of a, not contentious. It's obviously you're sick of it. So it's just a lot of Newcastle fans won't have heard from a City supporter who was as passionate as you. Your view on the thing. I think a lot of some Newcastle fans that might have the opinion of, if you get relegated or massive points deduction, but you don't have the titles taken away from you, which I don't think that's not going to happen. But like, if it didn't happen, then they might think, well, we should do that. Screw it. Let's just roll the dice and put some history into the history books. Some entries into the history books. Sorry, as I should say. Beg your pardon.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts now? Like, what are you sick of it? What do you think is going to happen? And what do you think? How are you going to react should the worst happen?
So my views are obviously just me, as a person, not as a City fan. Yeah. It's just me. Like, so I am firmly of the idea of sort of like separating church and state when it comes to football and finances. Like, I do not care about the businessmen. I do not care about the money in it. I think the money in football is ultimately pretty gross, and I accepted that a long time ago. I think City. If City are guilty, I think they're the ones that got caught. If that makes sense, like I think it's ridiculous that people presume that City are the big bad evil and everyone else is just innocent. I think it's naive beyond reality. I think it's be crazy if City are caught. Look, billionaires aren't billionaires because they're good people. Like they're not. Like there's not a single billionaire who isn't bending some rules somewhere. Some of you guys who watch this might hate me for saying that, but it's just the reality. Billionaires do not care about people in the way that someone with no money does, because it's impossible to make that money. Because if you had that, if you were an incredible person, you're a billionaire, you wouldn't be a billionaire. You'd give the money away. So that's a fact of life, and that's where I stand at it. It's very much, I'm aware of the hypocrisy and the moral viewpoint, and which will be thrown at the owners of our club in particular. It's ultimately, I've been a Manchester City fan for 30 odd years, and I know some people who are City fans who are considered great people, and they're still City fans, and I don't think it makes them less of a person, when you remove all that away from me. And I'll get onto the money bit aside, but I think it's just interesting, colour to add to it.
Yeah,
because I think I
agree.
I think we're all sort of hypocrites in the way we live through the world, and I think you make your own boundaries in life, and ultimately I consider myself a hope, and I think I am a good person. I care about people genuinely, and I strive for decency in life, and I think my content on my channel as well is never reactionary or shouty, and I can't stand it. I think I don't like childish behavior, so I try and be a decent person, but I'm also aware there's some battles I cannot win, and that I will choose, because ultimately I want an easier life. That sounds quite selfish, but I think there's only I can't take on a nation state even if I wanted to. I just can't. I think ultimately these issues with the money in football are way beyond the pay grade, or not pay grade, of just the ability of me as a fan to, like, this is a government wide thing. This is a geopolitical level issue that is beyond me as a person. I just want to be nice to my friends and family and people I meet and look after my son and exist and occasionally enjoy the things I like football or a film or music or a video game or whatever. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think people are allowed to exist. So that is the sort of color I would add there as a person. So when it comes back to money, this is I struggle to get involved in these conversations or enjoy them, because ultimately I didn't sign up to football or fall in love with it as a child because City's accountants were really good. No, I fell in love with it because Georgie and Cladzy and Peter Beagrie and Sean Gower and Uwe Rosler were just special. And for some reason, Sibieski, Anton Sibieski and Hugo Viana in the future. I don't know. I'm trying to think of Newcastle City links. I can't.
Oh, can I just say that he did? I did a little Google in the background. He did score that night in Feyenoord, by the way.
There we go. There we go. I knew it all along.
Please continue. Please continue.
But I guess the money thing is, I've made my peace whichever way it's going to happen, because I don't feel anything that the accountants may or may have done has any impact on the work, the honesty, the integrity that Kevin De Bruyne has or Sergio Aguero has. These guys are not cheats, even if you think City are cheats. They are not. They are footballers doing their jobs. They are not responsible for money men doing whatever they may or may have not done once again. So essentially, do I feel that my time supporting these footballers has been wasted if we City are found guilty? No. Does it change my memories celebrating with my friends or watching these footballers when they genuinely seem to care and they're doing the jobs? No. Because I know these people playing football ultimately are just people like ourselves who are really good and got to do the job that they love. So that's where I'm at with it. And a small part of me would sort of find it not funny as such, but I grew up when the City was shit. And I've got a 2-year-old, and if he so has to watch City grow up when they were shit at 2, I'll be like, ha, you can go through it now.
Well, you've just mentioned the young fans, and by the way, very
humble him and good.
Yeah, very succinctly, very eloquently put. I think this day and age, I don't think anyone's getting any titles or trophies ripped away from them. I just don't think that's going to happen. I know it happened to Juventus way back when, but I just don't think that's going to happen. The implications of whatever the findings are obviously will have sort of implications on our club, whether that's positive or negative or whatever you want to look at it. But I think you put it really well there. But it would be quite, like you say, funny to. I remember I was watching being in the town on the 3-3. That great, not 3-3, the 2-2. Was it 2-2 earlier in the season? Or
this season.
1-1. Anthony Gordon scored a penalty. Anthony Gordon scored a penalty.
It was a dive, I remember.
It was Edison, man. He wanted away. I remember seeing kids in the town centre giving it the big and just me being like, you don't even know. I know some proper City fans, and
They kids, man.
I know.
Kids play the hand they're dealt with, don't they? And if it's you're the best team, they'll play the best team. And
I guess it. But I think maybe I'll take that word proper.
You know what I mean?
You know what I mean? Being in the doldrums, being in the trenches, and it would be so funny to see who stays. We don't know. We genuinely don't know. This is such an unknown.
No, you're right. Definitely there's a lot of views put it that way, because a lot of fans will disappear.
Yeah. Should you fall down the tiers and obviously be hamstrung financially because, you have to sell all these players, but that's probably, we don't know. But it would be, like you say, you've very poetically brought it back to the start from talking about people really holding on to this and cherishing it because you're doing so well. And then
as well, in terms of the actual charges, I can only back your club. I think City, the worst case scenario is that I think City know how to get around what they can and can't get around, if that makes sense. I think there might be some very clever accounting, but probably still legal, and I think it might be that the moral side of it is a little bit dubious, but it might still be legal. And I also come back to the most Occam's razor is a sort of principle I try and live my life with, which essentially the most likely explanation is usually the correct one,
Yep.
I all get reasonably philosophical this time, and I'm just tired, man. Philosophical. Magnum and McDonald's.
Yeah. Occam's razor.
Sibieski.
Sibieski's cat. Sibieski's cat next. Is it dead? Is it alive?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, But if it's anyway. What I was going to say, basically, do I think that all these incredibly huge businesses that have their reputations online that aren't owned by Manchester City, that all these sponsors, that all these accountants, that these all regulated accountants who are forced to check City's accounts, do I think every single one of these people is involved in mass fraud on a level that would destroy all their lives? Probably not, because once again, that is on the balance of probabilities. The most likely explanation that that I don't think City probably could get away with 10 years of cooking the books and also literally fraud. The regular, all these people have to go through it. They are literally like risking serious jail time. Not just like, oh, Premier League will take some points off. The accusations are criminal. So I think the most likely explanation is that it isn't quite as severe as people suggest. I think there could be something. I'm stupid, but it all goes back to the overall point I would make. Whereas that ain't my problem. I'm a Man City fan, and I'll be a Man City fan in 4 years if our owners have left. If I'm here in 4 years, fingers crossed there will be, And ultimately, I have been a City fan all my life because I'm a football fan, and I don't think I should be responsible. Like, I don't think you should be responsible, or anyone should be responsible. I think that's something I would say to most football fans. You don't have to go in and fight for your owners. I don't think you have to. I think you're allowed to just be a football fan, and I think that's one thing I've sort of got tired of, because I did it an awful lot when the charges came out, but now over the past year or two, I've sort of grown tired of having to answer for this. I go on Sky and they're like, "What do you think of the charges?" Like, I'm not an accountant, man. Go and speak to someone qualified, not stupid YouTuber from Manchester who just wants to talk about football and Kevin De Bruyne good, So that's sort of where I fall on it.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, and I appreciate it. I was just looking at the clock and I was thinking, I've got to throw it out there. We've got to hear from a proper City fan.
I'm fine, mate. I'm enjoying the chat, so it's all right.
But we've got a game this Saturday.
36 minutes in. This is my fault. I talk too much. Sorry.
No, absolutely. Do not apologize for talking. I am just exactly the same. I when I want to get my words out, I'll say as many as I need to.
I like it. That's the point. I do videos, man. I like talking to people. It's fun. So,
but let's talk about this match on Saturday then, because as I said at the opening of the video of the podcast, is Newcastle are having a decent season. We've lost a few games we should have won. We've won some games that have been brilliant results. We're in a cup final. We're fighting for Champions League football still, and we're on the same points as you guys. I think we're literally below you on, I think, alphabetical order, because you might have scored more, but you've also conceded more, and we're on the exact same goal difference.
Yeah.
It's a battle of 6th and 5th. But like I said at the top of the video, we haven't got a point at the Etihad or the City of Manchester Stadium since 2006, a 0-0 draw. It's been a really bad hunting ground for Newcastle, and that stigma has always followed us. And to be fair, most of the times we've went there since then, since the takeover, we've just got battered. There's been the odd 1-0, the odd 2-1, but most of the times we've been humbled. How do you see this game going? You're welcoming a Newcastle side, like I said, with the likes of Alexander Isak, Anthony Gordon, Bruno Guimaraes, who you're obviously a fan of, Sandro Tonali, some really good players. And you're on the back of this result against Real Madrid in an end-to-end game with this return leg next week, all this stuff. How does this factor into your thinking about how this game is going to happen, or roll out on Saturday?
So immediately, this was at St. James's Park. I would genuinely just expect us to lose.
Right.
The fact that it's the Etihad, you're right. There's something about Newcastle and City games. If it's at ours, we're vastly more confident. If it's at yours, we always struggle. Even if we manage to get a win, we always struggle. It's always very close, And in Newcastle, the only thing I would say is I just really don't want to play Newcastle. Like, you are built to give us trouble these days. Like, City's biggest problems are physicality, midfield, and tired, weak legs, if I'm being honest, old legs. And that midfield of yours, like I said, Bruno and Tonali and Joe Linton and so on. And then, is Gordon available? He's a doubt, isn't he, currently?
Well, he was a doubt. He was obviously left out the Saturday's squad, but
right.
fingers crossed he should be all right. It's happened in the past, but like where he's been left out of a game and then obviously came back the next game. So I would say fingers crossed, because our options on the flank.
There's no great player who's been labelled as a doubt ahead of a big game who's ever missed a game. If someone's a doubt, that means I need a painkiller. You know what I mean? Or I'll miss it if it was. I don't know, Wolves at home, he'd miss it, but for City, he'd be available. So yeah, then Gordon and Isak's in phenomenal form, and then you obviously, you've got the skill out wide, you've got the physicality in the field, you've got a striker going through, his golden patch in general, and you've got physical, aggressive, up for it defenders and good attacking fullbacks. So you're built to give City problems. Obviously, the Etihad, for whatever reason, and I never understand why, but the beauty of psychology means teams play differently regardless of whether they're somewhere else. So it's different at the Etihad, and I'm definitely nervous about this game. The Real Madrid game was weird. they would definitely deserve to beat us in terms of the balance of chances. But there were spells where City actually were quite reasonably impressive in that game in terms of the control. And Pep did try something slightly new with John Stones, not playing as a defender, just playing as an out-and-out midfielder. He was playing as the defensive midfielder in that game, and he was great actually. For
I
for
thought
as
that
long
was a
as
couple of highlights. Like there was a couple of times where he really played a holding midfield role, where like he
right.
pinned a couple of players, like sort of turned a circle, did a little pivot, knocked it out
If
out
he'd
wide.
been fit all season, we would have been not fine about Rodri, but he would have done a very, very good job of stepping in, because profile wise, in terms of his height, his comfortability on the ball, he would have been great. He would have made a change. Also the fact that we managed to play Kanji, Diaz, Ake, Stones, Vardy all on the pitch at the same time. We weren't solid defensively, but against a lesser side than Mbappe, Bellingham, Vinicius Junior, Rodrigo, I think we would have done a lot better defensively. So if we can, Kanji's now out for the season apparently, so that's a massive blow. Another one. Ake came off after 45 minutes, whatever it was. Was it 45 or something like that? Ake came off early. Greenish came off injured, and he played out of nowhere, barely played, and he was great in that for a while. So the injuries are just racking up again, and players are fit and tired. So it's not we could put a team out that could be decent if he plays Nico Gonzalez, the new guy. Ruben Diaz being on the pitch and being available, and John Stones being available is great. But it looks like Ake and Kanji aren't. So every time we take one step forward, you get two backwards of injuries, and we can't keep up with him. And even the players on the pitch, they're not fit. They're just like they're not injured. So they're just playing. So this is where we're at. So this is, I guess, the long and short of it is you're never gonna have a better time, a better chance. To get something at the Etihad. And this is not me being pessimistic. It's just being realistic. And I think Eddie Howe and the players and yourself, you should feel the same. And De Bruyne looks tired these days. And, some of our better players came off injured the other day, and we've still got quality. I'm expecting something like Edison in goal. Maybe Rico Lewis will start, or Nunes will probably start at home. And then Diaz and Stones and Vardy, which is, is decent. Midfield would be probably the new lad Nico Gonzalez, who we don't know anything about. We have 20 minutes against Leyton Orient. He could be great. He could be. He could get overwhelmed by the power of that midfield. Who are up to speed of it. If it's him and say Bernardo or Kovacic or something like that, it could be all right. But then I'm hoping like Savinho, or Doku of something special, and maybe Phil Foden and Haaland. It's still a good side. It's just not an informed side or fit side. So yeah, we'll see. I think I'm nervous about it, to be honest, mate.
Well, we'll see what happens, because I mean, you've mentioned Anthony Gordon there. He's expected to come back into the side, but where our sort of frailties are at this moment in time is at centre half, which is where we've normally had a lot of sort of backup and cover. Sven Botman, who was fantastic against Arsenal in that semi-final second leg, and is a great centre half for Newcastle, and pretty much I always call him one of the captains. He isn't the captain. Bruno's the captain, but Dan Burn's been fantastic, and he came off with a groin injury against Birmingham, and there is rumours that neither of them are going to be risked against Man City, so that would leave probably a centre-half partnership of Emil Kraft and Fabian Schär. Now, don't get me wrong, love those two. Yeah, a bit of a hodgepodge defence, but again, you've said you've got your own injury problems as it is, so it's going to be a really interesting game. I mean, I did notice against Real Madrid that early doors there was some, like you've just mentioned about Pep's mention about the transitions and what happens after the ball gets lost, and there were so many gaps in the first, I would say 10-15 minutes with Real Madrid, and then obviously at the back end of the second half there was similar gaps and they got exploited. I could see an Anthony Gordon and an Isak and a Bruno exploiting those gaps, but
you will. It depends if we can ride it. You're going to. Gordon, particularly, if he's up against like Nunes, he's going to have a field day.
Well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm sort of hoping for a miracle and for Ake to not be injured, and maybe the new lad Kusanov can start. He's a centre back, but if you were trying to make a sort of Kyle Walker clone a little bit, you'd come out a little bit like him. He's different, but he's like bullish, not the biggest guy in the world, but broad as anything and lightning quick as well. And I'm hoping they sort of maybe try that just to lock down Anthony Gordon, but I don't know what he'll do. And I'm hoping for the reaction, after a game like that, and there will be. It's just the problem is at the end of the games we just can't keep up. Our stamina is in the bin because we're bringing on players who just can't run anymore, and teams also, they just know how to get at City. The fear factor is genuinely gone. It is, and maybe for some fans who aren't paying attention, but you've got to bear in mind clubs and their analysts and the players, they're paying a lot more attention, and they know where City's weaknesses are. So it's not just like, we're playing City. They're like, we're playing City with weaknesses, and they're aware of it, and they'll get at us. And it's going to be a nerve-wracking game for me as a City fan. In previous years, I'm always confident at home against Newcastle, as good as you are. But this is one where you could genuinely get 3 points here if Isak takes his chances and Gordon has a good game, which he probably will do.
Well, like I said, we've never won there in the league ever, and we've only had 1 point since 2006. So if we do get 3 points at the weekend, good luck to my liver. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. One thing before we say our goodbyes, can you give us a score prediction? Genuinely, I mean, you can speak with your heart and your head.
I always do that. I do a head and heart one.
Yeah.
My head says a tough game for City. I still think we probably won't lose. I'll probably say like a 2 or something like that. I think we're going to score. I think Haaland's in good form actually right now, and Vardiol just seems to be like he's a special footballer. Vardiol, weird centre back.
He's my favourite Man City player. I mean, I know you've got Haaland, but he's literally that layoff for his goal.
But the pass before it, and then he ran about 70 yards.
And then he made the run as well. It was his.
I don't even know he got there. Like he's not even that fast, and he's just out of nowhere. Like
did I have 3 assists? Should have had 3 assists.
I agree. Just an FPL cheat. But him, and then Savinho, and then I'm hoping look, the new lad's good. I think there's a good chance that City come out with points, So I'll say the head, though. My head will say like a 2 or something like that. Potentially even Newcastle edging it. My heart says City, and Newcastle's general reputation at the Etihad. That City come out, we win 3-1. Marmoush scores his first goal, and Nico Gonzalez is actually the Rodri clone we've been waiting for. So.
Well, at least your heart's given us a goal because we haven't even managed to score a goal. And I think the last
he's scoring. It's a nailed on. Mate.
Well, I think was it 1, 2, 3, 4 in all competitions we haven't scored in the last 6 there. But I said,
by the way, even like the best version of any prediction I could give you now, City concede. It's just everyone scores against us.
Well, that's me putting £20 on a City clean sheet because you've said it now. But I said exactly the same on a preview we did yesterday. I said 2-2. I had this feeling of maybe us actually coming out the blocks very well, scoring a goal, and then maybe sort of regressing into it's the Etihad. Oh God, we haven't won here, and that you scoring a couple of goals, and then maybe us triumphantly getting a point and scoring the equaliser, and maybe just giving as good as we've got. And I would hugely take that, to be honest. I know City aren't the City of previous seasons, and they're in a sort of transition state of flux. But I would still take a point. Very much I'd take scoring as well. So yeah, I'd take a 2-2. It's going to be intriguing to see, Erling Haaland and Alexander Isak on the same pitch as well, because for me, 2 of the best strikers in the world right now in world football. So yeah, it'd be very, 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 very interesting. But all I've got left to say, Stephen, is thank you so much for your time. I said I was going to take 25 minutes of your time. I've took 45 odd. So
I enjoyed it, mate.
Thank you so much. And if you ever want anyone watching this, any sort of Man City content, if you haven't heard of Stephen and the Esteemed Kompany, where have you been? Please go and check him out. But for everyone watching this who is of Newcastle I was going to say disposition. Yes, that's the word I want to look for. Right, anyone who's watching this, who normally watches the channel, thank you so much for watching. Give the video a like. Please give it a share. Subscribe if you haven't. And obviously, you can become a member of the channel for $2.99 a month. As little as that, where you get loads of extra content and exclusive little perks. But yes, thank you very much. Here's hoping we get something at the weekend. Stephen, thank you very much again. And we will be speaking to you very, very, very soon.
Cheers.